Hey, hey, Disney fans, planners, and reluctant visitors. I'm Becky, and this is Touring Plans Teaches. This week, we're finally graduating to the 200 level courses for Walt Disney World Touring Strategy. We're going to share some real strategies for your park days today, and we're not going to focus on a whole day. We're going to zoom in on early entry specifically. This week, we're going to talk about the strategy you should have if you're going to do early entry at Animal Kingdom or EPCOT. And then next week, we'll share Hollywood Studios and Magic Kingdom. We're going to start by talking about early entry at Animal Kingdom. Now on the screen, I have the 5 attractions at Animal Kingdom that have the highest wait times. You tend to want to use early entry to hit at least some of these attractions so that you don't have to hit them later in the day when waits are longer. So we can see here, Avatar's Flight of Passage has the longest wait times, followed by Kilimanjaro Safaris, Navi River Journey, Expedition Everest, and Dinosaur. If we plot those on a map, we'll see we have a little bit of a problem if we were just going to address them in order. We've got Flight of Passage down in the bottom left corner, Kilimanjaro Safaris all the way in the top left. We'd then go back to Navi River Journey in the bottom left, Expedition Everest is a hike across the park, and then finally Dinosaur sort of in the bottom right corner. We obviously don't want to use this strategy, that's a lot of backtracking, so where should we go first in order to make the most use of our extra half hour and then a little bit of time after that as crowds start ramping up? I'm going to walk us through step by step. We'll get some data, we'll look at the map and where exactly you should go to make the best time. I'm going to be using this fancy stick that my daughter painted for me at her art camp a couple of weeks ago. Woohoo, high quality pointers here on Touring Plans Teaches. So the number one ride that you should hit if you have early entry is Flight of Passage at Animal Kingdom. This gets multi-hour waits. It's often the longest wait out of any attraction at Walt Disney World, and that's including Rise of the Resistance. So you want to hit Flight of Passage as early in the day as you can. The entrance is way down here, so you're going to walk through the oasis towards the Tree of Life and Discovery Island. Then you're going to hook a left and come down to Pandora. But you don't want to get in the queue for Navi River Journey just yet. We still want to make sure we avoid that wait too. You scoot around a little bit to the right and go on Flight of Passage. By the time you get there, there are also a lot of other people trying to do Flight of Passage right off the bat. That means you could still have up to about a 30-minute wait. This is going to be highly dependent on the crowd level and how far up in the crowd you are when the park opens. So it really behooves you to get into Animal Kingdom very, very early, like at least 30 minutes before early entry even starts. So then you ride Flight of Passage. You have about a 30-minute wait. That means early entry's already over and regular park guests are entering the park. You have a 6-minute ride, and then you just have a quick walk around the corner to Navi River Journey. There shouldn't be large crowds yet, despite the park being officially open. You should still have less than a 10-minute wait, and again, a 5-minute relaxing boat ride. We want to make sure we get this out of the way early, even if it's not a super huge priority for your party, because we're already in Pandora, we might as well not come back there later, and because its wait times do increase drastically during peak hours. So once we've finished with Pandora, we don't want to go all the way back to the Tree of Life and Discovery Island, because we have this clever little cut through to our next step, and so that's what we want to take, is that little path over to the left of Pandora as you're exiting. Where does that take us? That takes us past Festival of the Lion King, which is right here, and over to Kilimanjaro Safaris. So we're still after official park opening here. Crowds are going to be a little bit higher at Kilimanjaro Safaris. If you take that cut through, it's about a 6-minute walk. If you miss it and you go around to the Tree of Life, you've got an 8 to 10-minute walk. So it saves you a couple of minutes, and maybe you're beating a few people there. You should still have less than a 20-minute wait at Kilimanjaro Safaris, even though the park is opened. And then the safari is a much longer duration. It's a 20-minute ride as you drive through the savannas and see all of the animals. So at this point, we're pretty deep into the morning already. Crowds are starting to increase. This is where actually I would abandon any attempt to hit more of the headliners. I would save them for later in the day, and I would start doing things like Rafiki's Planet Watch, which is over here, or the Gorilla Falls Expedition Trail, maybe see the Feathered Flight, some of the shows. But if you want to make sure that you hit at least one more attraction before wait times really peak, you can go to Expedition Everest next. And in order to do that, you're going to come around to the right here, and you're going to go over to Asia. And so Expedition Everest all the way across the park from Kilimanjaro Safaris, which is why I typically like to do other things instead of walking past them all. But if you do that, it's a 7-minute walk, and you should get to Expedition Everest, and it should have about a 20-minute wait. Again, very crowd level dependent. But by the time you get there, that'll go much higher later in the day, so you're avoiding some more wait. It'll take about 4 minutes. Then if you're already over there, you can do DINOSAUR if you want, but hitting those main 4 is the most important part of early entry. Next, we're going to talk about EPCOT, and EPCOT's an interesting case because early entry at EPCOT can typically save you more time than Genie Plus will in the course of a day, and that doesn't happen at many of the other parks. But it's also very tricky, so we have 4 attractions here that all have pretty high wait times during those peak hours. We have Remy's Ratatouille Adventure, highest average wait times, followed by Frozen Ever After, Test Track, and Soarin'. Why is this such a problem, and why are we going to have to talk about the order in which we do these? Let's take a look on the map and figure out where these attractions are compared to each other. Highest wait times, Remy, in France, so top right corner of this map. Then our next one is Frozen, which is literally as far away from France as you can get around that World Showcase Lagoon. So already you're going to have a hike between those two no matter how we order them. Then we have to sort of traverse between the World Showcase and Future World or World Discovery, whatever it's called now, for Test Track and Soarin'. And that takes a lot of time too. It's a little bit deceptive. So we have Test Track over on the left-hand side, and then we also have Soarin' on the right-hand side. So we sort of have the 4 corners of the park here, and if we want to hit them all during early entry or shortly thereafter, that's going to require a lot of walking. So we're going to talk about 2 different strategies here. One is entering from the International Gateway, which comes out right by France. Not everyone can do this unless you Uber or Lyft there, but it has significant advantages over entering from the main entrance. But we'll give you a strategy if you're wanting to enter from the main entrance as well. Let's start by talking about my preferred strategy for early entry at EPCOT, and that's starting at the International Gateway. And we'll see why. Let's take a look at the first map. So the International Gateway is right here, and if you do early entry from there, you're literally right around the corner from Remy. You can get there without anyone else being there and have a really short wait. What's the problem with entering from International Gateway? It's a little bit harder to get to. If you're using the monorail, you're driving yourself, or you're taking a Disney bus, they're going to automatically take you to the main entrance, so not in the World Showcase at all. In order to get to the International Gateway, you have to be staying at one of those Crescent Lake resorts, you have to be able to take the Skyliner, or you can do some combination of an Uber or Lyft dropping you off and then walking to the International Gateway. So you can get there, it just might take a little extra work. But you do have the advantage of being right next to Remy, which has the highest peak wait times in the park. If you can get there immediately, you can basically walk right on. Otherwise, you should have something like less than a 10-minute wait. And it has a 5-minute duration, so you're going to be quickly on your way to your next stop. What's that next stop? Frozen Ever After. So this is still a really long walk. You have to go all the way around the World Showcase Lagoon. It's pretty equidistant, so you could choose to go either direction to get to Norway to ride Frozen Ever After. That's typically about a 13-minute walk if you've got a good pace going. So we've waited 10 minutes for Remy. It's a 5-minute attraction, and then we had a 13-minute walk to Frozen. Early entry is already almost over. But we get to Frozen and not a lot of people are there yet. So we should have around a 10-minute wait and then a 4-minute ride. Next, we're going to go down to Test Track. So we're trying to skip this transition between World Showcase and the rest of EPCOT and only do it once. We don't want to do it multiple times. So this is going to be our single transition here as we go over to Test Track. This is about a 6-minute wait. Now, where people get screwed up here is they miss the little cutoff for walking to Test Track. So as you exit Frozen Ever After and go by Mexico, You can see here there's a little cutoff by this pavilion that can take you to test track. A lot of people miss that and go all the way to the real entrance and around, and that's going to take you a lot longer. If you can find that cutoff, then it's only about a 6-minute walk as you pass Mexico and then get to test track. By the time you get to test track, people that were rope dropping from the main entrance have already gotten there, so it's going to have a longer wait. You're probably going to wait about 30 minutes, but you still want to get here early in the day. This is less than you would wait for it later in the day, and ideally this is before those afternoon thunderstorms roll through and shut test track down. So we get to test track, we have about a 30-minute wait, and then the 4-minute ride itself. Then we want to get to our fourth and final attraction of the morning, just to make sure we're skipping weights, and that's Soarin'. So we're going to walk all the way around here to Soarin', and there we're going to have probably less than a 15-minute wait. We're keeping this for fourth on purpose. Its wait times don't increase as rapidly as the other three, so we can put it in fourth place and it still won't have huge crowds by the time we get there. So we have that 6-minute walk across the park, less than a 15-minute wait, and then the 8-minute show. By this time, now I'm over on this side of the park. I could do the seas, I could do Journey into Imagination, I could do Spaceship Earth, I could hope that my Guardians of the Galaxy virtual queue boarding pass is called. I can do that and then go back to World Showcase later in the afternoon to enjoy Food and Wine Festival booths, Harmonious eventually, etc. Now let's compare this to an early entry strategy where you're entering at the main entrance instead of International Gateway, and we'll see why this is a little bit more problematic. We're going to enter from that main entrance down by Spaceship Earth, and we're going to go immediately to test track. A lot of people are like, why not go to Guardians of the Galaxy very first and beat the crowds there? It's because it currently has that virtual queue. You have to get a boarding pass. You don't know when your boarding group's going to get called, so we can't plan for it in early entry. We're just going to have to go there when that boarding group gets called, or anytime after your boarding group gets called. So instead, we're going to go straight for test track. We don't want to go to Soarin' first because its crowds don't increase as quickly. We want to beat the crowds to test track and the other two attractions that have those higher wait times. So we go to test track. Ideally, we're beating most of the people there because it's our first attraction of early entry, so we should only have about a 10-minute wait there, and then the 4-minute attraction. Next, we want to go to the next closest attraction, and that's Frozen Ever After. So again, you want to use this cutoff here instead of going all the way around to go past Mexico and then to the Norway Pavilion, where you'll find Frozen Ever After. By the time you get there, there should only be about a 10-minute wait for Frozen as well. A lot of the people aren't going immediately to Frozen. They're probably hitting it after they hit Remy or Test Track, so you're going to be part of that first wave that's doing Frozen as their second attraction. So you have that 10-minute wait, then the 4-minute boat ride for Frozen Ever After, and here's where you have to make some decisions. First, you could try to do Remy. This is where I would check wait times and see what's happening. It's a 13-minute walk to Remy around that World Showcase Lagoon, so this is a pretty big commitment, and wait times could be going up as more people filter in from the International Gateway and other places and try to make their way to Remy. By the time you get there, it could have up to a 45-minute wait, and on high crowd days that could be even higher. But that's a lot better than it will be later in the day, so you might want to chance it anyway. Or, if that wait time's too high for you after you get off Frozen, you could go back to Soarin', and this feels a little awkward because you're going to have a longer walk. It's then 10 minutes to Soarin', and you're going back into the Future World part of EPCOT instead of World Showcase. But that lets you leave Remy for later in the day. Maybe you're using Genie Plus for it, or maybe you're going to do it in extended evening theme park hours. And then it sets you up to stay in the Future World part for the rest of the morning and enjoy the other attractions. So if you chose this for your third attraction, you would have less than a 15-minute wait, and then you could enjoy Living with the Land or the Seas or whatever else you want to do in Future World. The problem with this version, if you're doing Soarin' third, is that if you choose then to do Remy, you have another long walk back up to Remy, and it's going to have even longer wait times. But either way you do it, if you choose Remy third and Soarin' fourth, or Soarin' third and Remy fourth, you're doing a lot more walking than you otherwise would have if you had entered from the International Gateway. And that's because we have to cross that boundary between World Showcase and Future World 2 times instead of just 1 time. Doable, you can still avoid a lot of the waits, but it's going to be a little harder to organize all of those attractions in an order that means you don't have to walk as much. So there we have it. We have 1 early entry strategy for Animal Kingdom and 2 for EPCOT, depending on whether you're using the International Gateway or the main entrance. All of these strategies assume that you're not using Genie Plus, and often I don't recommend Genie Plus for Animal Kingdom or EPCOT. You're using early entry to avoid those waits instead of paying for Genie Plus. Next week, we're going to talk about early entry at Hollywood Studios and Magic Kingdom, and those parks are very different. There, you can use early entry and buy Genie Plus and have some options about which attractions you're rope dropping and which attractions you're reserving. So we're going to have a few more different strategies next week as we get a little more complicated. Thanks for joining me this week, and we'll